Supervisor Marr is going to do is basically connect with the city attorney's office and the Office of Legislative Affairs to see, you know, as a purely like legal question, what is the explanation for, you know, is the city responsible or not? And then we kind of talked about what our next steps would be as a commission while we wait for them to answer that question. Definitely if the answer is yes, then the next step is working with ACC. It seems like what Director Donahue said at the last meeting, like they would be interested in a partnership with a third-party organization that does meet their standards. And so it's up to ACC to figure out what those standards are and just clearly define those standards. And then also it's up to the rescue volunteers to basically come up with an answer, you know, if they do want to create some sort of organization, a formal organization to partner with ACC, what they would need as far as support and resources, if that's even a possibility. And then we would go back and figure all of that out. But where it stands right now is we're waiting for the Board of Supervisors, you know, to answer that first question. And I have set up a meeting with Supervisor Haney's staff for next Thursday at 1:30 p.m. They had also reached out saying they were interested, and I know that Commissioner Tobin is out of town, so I wanted to ask if anyone else is interested in joining that meeting. You're welcome to come with me. We'd be discussing the same thing that we, you know, sent out in the letter, and basically trying to get some support and momentum on this issue so we can get an answer.
That's Thursday.
That's Thursday the 26th, so next Thursday at 1:30 p.m.
I think it could be there.
Okay, great, thank you.
Oh, great, that's awesome, thank you.
I also spoke to Tony Sislak about what they've been discussing within Tony's rescue. They're actively researching what their capabilities would be and trying to put together what would be a proposal for Ms. Donahue to be potentially looking at and giving feedback on.
Right. So it looks like both parties, or some of the parties involved are moving towards a formal relationship. Is this right? That the parties that are involved in this issue are trying to figure out a solution, and maybe that might...
I wouldn't go that far. I'd say that everybody's researching what they can, or the people I've talked to are researching what they'd be able to do to put together a commitment. But
Great.
I don't think anybody's officially talked to one another that conveyed to me.
Great. All right. Well, hopefully that'll be the next step. Is that the idea then? That once everyone figures out what their capabilities and needs are, that they come together and move forward? Is that the intention here?
As far as I'm aware, the only specific plan right now is to put together a plan that Virginia Donahue could review and give feedback on, see if it meets her criteria for Tony's group or a subsidiary of Tony's group handling the feral kitten calls directly in a way that ACC and hopefully SPCA would approve and pass calls on directly to them.
Great, okay. All right. Thank you for that update. Any other commissioners have questions about this? Any commissioners have questions on this? So at this point, this was still an action item because we've taken action on it, but there's no action we're not asking, are you asking for any action at this point on this? No, this is a discussion, is that correct? Yep, okay. Russell?
I didn't bring it up.
Right.
As far as I know, it seems like it's just an ongoing issue. I guess the one kind of question I have, and we can't have the answer here, is it already seems like a lot of those rescue organizations meet the criteria. I don't understand. Do you know what exactly the criteria are that the ACC wants them to meet? I know she talked about it a little bit, but it already seemed like since they were already working with those organizations that they were already meeting that criteria.
As a commission member, I've tried to kind of stay out of any specifics as far as their planning of an actual protocol, but from what I gathered, it was mostly about making sure that if facilities were not available within the rescue agency, that they would have a cohesive plan to have cats remain where they're at. A system where they could constantly sort of update what feral cat facilities are available, know what the carrying capacity is of their organization, and be able to answer phones appropriately, sort of giving a central database for phone calls to come into for kitten season, if you will.
Right. Like I said,
Yeah,
it's not
it
really a
sounds
question
like-
for you.
ACC is not gonna be doing any of this unless it is determined that the city is responsible for feral cats, correct?
Well, regardless, they're answering the phones, and SPCA is answering the phones, and that's been the biggest area of
Right.
concern from everybody, is what happens to those people, or how are those people greeted when they call, and what are they directed to do?
Correct, but they're not gonna change the current course of action, which is please leave those kittens in place unless it's found that the city is responsible for the feral cat
I
population.
think the question is, at what point is the city responsible, is that correct? I mean, I'm sorry, I know I read the minutes, I missed the last, meeting, but before that, one of the large questions was, at what point is the city responsible to bring them into the shelter? Is it at 8 weeks or before 8 weeks? And my understanding that this is what, no?
Well, I think that's
It's
sort of
not
a
the-
subsection
Oh,
of the overall conversation.
Okay.
The initial concern, and most of the public comment is being geared toward what happens with the initial call handling when people call in during kitten season. I have a feral cat in my backyard with kittens. What happens in the protocol after that?
So can I just interject? So just to recap what's happening, we went through that several meetings, just as far as everyone having the kind of call center information. So whether the public calls ACC Field Services or Community Cats at SPCA, they're using the same language and the same kind of flow chart to get that information. Any calls that come into ACC are logged, and then that information is shared immediately with the Community Cat Program at SPCA, and they call immediately and follow up, and then they're tracking. I mean, I have a couple, I can share the numbers as far as how many calls we have. I think the issue is, I mean, we do have quite a bit of programming around feral cats with TNR and small kittens, and again, we're not turning anyone away that's coming in. I think it's only the population where the policy changed around queens with kittens that were staying in the shelter, and there's interest in doing that outside of the shelter. And that the calls are not going directly to the trappers, they're being screened, and then the trappers are being asked on behalf of community cats to go out if there's trapping needed. But, I mean, those were the two pieces essentially. So I mean, yeah, the calls are still gonna come through ACC and Community Cat, and they're handled in a very similar manner, and then that information is shared. So I agree with Bunny, I think that assessment is correct, I don't think that part is not going to change. I can just, I mean, the updated numbers, if anybody's interested. Since March, Community Cats has received and documented 346 calls. In August, there were 49 feral spay and neuter surgeries, and 19 of those were community cat intakes. And then fiscal year to date, 102 feral spay and neuter surgeries, 35 of those are community cat intakes. Let's see, so of all the calls that have come in, only 12 have involved queens and nursing kittens that have been asked to be left in the field. And then, and I think that was pretty similar to what we reported last time. I don't think that number's gone up. And then just the outcomes. One group of 4 died within days of the caller contacting us. The queen was still around, and there was no trauma to the kittens. One group was kind of adopted by the neighbor, and she did the spay and neuter at their own clinic. 2 groups were brought in to
Tony's Kitty Rescue, separate from, Community Cat. 3 groups did not return calls. 4 groups went through TNR, 5 queens and 23 kittens. And then 1 group is still, in contact with Community Cats with, the kittens, and the queens already had, surgery and been released. So that's kind of the update. So really, there's 12 groups that were calls about feral queens with kittens, and those are the outcomes.
Thank you for that update. Commissioners have any other comments or questions? If not, we can open up to public comment. Is there any public comment on this issue?